Hi guys, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Kyra, and here on this channel, we're all about getting use out of the makeup that we already have. And we're not necessarily looking for an editorial look or Instagram fame. We're just here for real makeup, for real life and real people like us. Today's video is the first update for my Big Fat Eyeshadow Project pan. This is a project of my own creation where I combined a Pan That palette with Pan in Every palette as well as a Pan Those eyeshadows and just kind of wrap them all together. I did not have an update, unfortunately, on February 1st because I did fall and break my tibia and my fibula and had to have surgery and then go to rehab for 2 weeks, all of which, you know, I was not wearing makeup. So today is the first update, even though it should be the second update, and I don't have as much progress as I would like, but that's okay. It's meant to be fun, and it's just meant to give focus on some of my eyeshadow palettes and do things in more of a random and fun way. So if that sounds good to you, let's go ahead and get into the update. So this year, my Pan That palette is my Tarte Clay Volume 1. I want to make sure to mention that my girl Angela over at Beauty and Life with Angela, who will always be linked down below for this project, is also panning a Tarte Clay palette, but she is panning the Volume 2. So if you want a bit more of a fix for Pan That palette, make sure to go check out Angela's channel and her update, which will also be up today. So of all of the three palettes, I definitely feel like I got the most use out of my Clay palette. I'll definitely have some up close pictures and things like that for you, some good juicy close-ups. But I definitely have made some dips in this palette this month. Of course, the matte cream shade is going to be the first one that I think I hit pan on, but I've got some good dips in some of the other ones as well. Most of the Tarte embossings on the eyeshadows are worn away. There's a little bit left in Smoke and Ember, and then of course Onyx is just going to be a hard shade for me to hit pan on, I think. The goal is to hit pan on all of the eyeshadows in this palette. If I end up using the face shades later in the year, cool beans. If not, that's fine too. So in terms of how many times I used each shade in the past month, the first shade in the palette, which is Journey, I used 7 times, 8 times including today. For the shade Stone right underneath, I used that twice. Solstice, of course, I used the most at 16 uses. For Dunes, I used that shade 5 times. Probably mostly because I am panning this sort of cooler eye look using one of the other palettes in this project, so it became really helpful. The shade Smoke I only used once. The shade Sand I used twice. The shade Ember I used 3 times. And Onyx is the only shade that I did not use this month, which kind of bums me out. And then the last shade in the palette, Instinct, I used 4 times. And I did not use any of the face shades this month, mostly because I'm panning bronzers in other projects. So Pan That palette, I definitely feel good about my progress. I would definitely like to see more progress and more usage on all of the shades for next month. I think a good goal would definitely be to hit pan on Solstice. I feel like I'm really close. There's quite a dip there, and possibly also hit pan on Journey here. For the rest of the shades, I would really like to see each shade get used at least 5 times. So that'll be my goal for next month. So for Pan in Every palette, I chose myself the Natasha Denona Lila palette, and I mentioned in the intro that I had not yet picked a shade that I wanted to concentrate on, but I have since chosen the shade Juno here. I'm gonna pop it out actually so I'll be able to show it to you better. So this is the shade Juno. You can see here that there's quite a dip going on in here. It's a really pretty color. I even think it would work nicely as a face highlight. That's what it looks like. It's just nice sheen. It is what I have all over my lid today, and I really like this shade, and I'm excited to finally hit pan in one of my Natasha Denona palettes. I have been using this a lot all over the lid, but it also works beautifully as an inner corner. And by default, I have used some of the other shades in this palette. I have used this shade Livid and this shade Lila, as well as the shade Nude Mauve. I think I've used a couple of the other shades, but I didn't record that. I'll try to do better in March, but yeah, I'm hoping that this will be able to roll out by the end of the month and roll something new in. For Pan in Every palette, I am picking the palettes, but for Pan Those Eyeshadows, which we're going to get to next, I am randomizing the palette, and I should have randomized this shade. I don't know what I was thinking because I've watched these projects quite a bit. So I will do that next time. And in case I didn't mention it, the goal for Lila is to hit pan in at least one shade. If I want to continue on working on it after that, I can, or I can roll something else new in. The palette that I randomly generated for Pan Those Eyeshadows is the Flower Beauty Desert Lights palette. The goal is to hit pan on one shade or to use one shade 20 times. Like I said for the previous palette in the intro, I had not yet chosen a shade that I wanted to work on. I have since picked this shade right here, which is the shade Terra, which is definitely not the shade that I thought I would pick, but it's actually a really beautiful shade, and it does, even though it's very warm tone, pair beautifully, I think, with the shade from the Natasha Denona palette. So I have also tried to keep track of the other shades if I use them in any of the looks. For the shade Terra, I have used it 5 times so far out of 20. I am definitely not going to try and hit pan on this shade, and that is the reason that I put the 20 use rule in there, or exception, because this is a brand new palette. It would take me a very long time to hit pan on this deep of a shade, and for the rest of these shades, I just didn't really feel like they were shades that I could incorporate with the other palettes that I was working on and still get shades, or looks rather, that felt wintry to me. So I did use Terra 5 times. The shade Horizon, this one right here, which is really beautiful, I used twice, and then the shade Soul and Sahara I used once. It's a beautiful palette. I'm having fun working with it, and I hope to use the shade Terra at least 5 times in the next month, if not more than that, so that I can start rolling in some other palettes into this project. But for now, that is what I have. Now, I thought it would be fun this month to incorporate an idea that my friend Angela over at Beauty and Life with Angela has been doing with her Pan That Palette updates, and that is to create a look using that palette, or in my case, these palettes. So I wanted to go ahead and share that look with you today. It's a look that I've been doing quite a bit, this look right here, and I am really enjoying it, so stay tuned because that's coming up right now. All right, let us knock out an eye look with these 3 palettes here. I'm going to start with my Pan That palette, and I'm going to go ahead and set my eyeshadow primer with this shade right here, which is Solstice. It's just a matte cream shade. Nothing too exciting. It's probably the shade that I will hit pan on first. I would imagine. Next, I think I'll go in with the shade Journey right here. The first shade, the first eyeshadow shade in the palette. And I would imagine this would be one of the first ones I would hit pan on as well. It's a great transition shade for my skin tone, I feel like. And it's also been going well with this sort of go-to look that I've been doing with this palette, or with these three palettes. So I'm really getting a lot of use out of this shade. And using the same shade and a different little brush here, I've been using this on the lower lash line a lot as well. It's kind of connecting it with the upper part of the eye. All right, and then to just lightly blend that shade, I like this one right here, which is Instinct. I don't know, it's kind of a slight satin shade, but it really works nicely to sort of transition, the transition shade, so to speak. So I really like it for that. And just another way to get another shade involved in the mix. The other shade I've been liking to use is this shade right here called Stone. And I'm just going to take this same brush that I use for the lower lash line and just kind of bring this in at an angle on the outer corner of my eye, just for a little bit of definition before I go in with the darkest shade that I'll be using. And then I just take that brush with no additional product and kind of bring it a little bit on the lower lash line just to tie everything together. And one more blend before we switch palettes. Now, moving on to the Desert Lights palette, I am using this shade Terra as my chosen shade out of this palette. And I've been just using this on about the outer half to third, somewhere in there, just to deepen things up. It's kind of a reddish brown shade, or a plummy brown, which I love. It gives a really nice depth to the outer part of the lid. Clearly I am not going to hit pan on this shade using it that way, but I kind of just wanted to choose a shade from this palette that would work with the other shades I knew I would be working on in the other palettes, or specifically with the Lila palette, because I really wanted to pan the shade that we're going to be putting all over the lid, or hit pan I should say. And now we are on to the Lila palette. So the shade I'm working on in this palette is the shade Juno right here, and it is pretty dang beautiful if you ask me. So I'm going to pick it up on my little short-handled MAC 217 here, and we're going to apply this across most of the lid. And the shade from Flower Beauty is slightly warm, or is warm, and this is a very cool tone shade, but I still like the way they look together. I'm definitely hoping to hit pan on this shade Juno by next update. It's just so pretty and it's so easy to use. It's nice and cool tone. Makes a beautiful inner corner highlight if you're doing something pinky or purple or cool tone, which, you know, if there's a time of year to be panning a shade like this, it's definitely in the winter where I use a lot more cool tones. Now I'm going to take my finger and just sort of punch this up a little bit, and there we go. This is the eye look that I've been wearing quite a bit. And I've definitely gotten more use overall in this palette as a whole. Meanwhile, I'm going to complete my look and then I will come back and we will wrap up this video. Alright, so here we are with the completed look. I did finish off the eyes with my Wet n Wild Semi Brown Now eyeliner as always. And I busted out this Clinique High Impact Mascara. I don't think it has a high impact. It's pretty natural looking to me, but that's okay. I lined my lips with MAC Whirl. I love it. And then a newer to me product is the L'Oreal Balm in Gloss in the shade Rose Harmony, which pairs beautifully with MAC Whirl, in case you were curious. So that is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed seeing my kind of go-to look using the current 3 palettes that I have in this big fat eyeshadow project. I'm loving this project so far, but I really want to get into these 3 palettes more in depth in the next month. I'll come back next month and give you a new look and hopefully maybe roll one of these puppies out and roll something new in. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I appreciate you and your time, and I hope all of your makeup days are absolutely beautiful makeup days, and I'll see you in my next one soon.